This is just a quick rundown, Jim, just so you can understand more clearly the circuit from the controller to the motor. You see that on the bottom connector there are two blue wires on the right hand two terminals, that's terminals 8 and 10, which are the output from the controller. One of the blue wires goes through the back and goes up and connects onto the ammeter, to the left hand side of the ammeter. And from the right hand side of the ammeter, there's a blue cable that goes down and it goes onto the choke, one of the choke terminals. You can see where the screwdriver is in now. And it goes through the choke, back from the choke onto the other side of the terminal block, and goes out as a blue wire, and from there it goes onto the socket that feeds the power to the motor, which is the topmost to the left of the sockets on the outside of the machine. To gain access to that, you twist and there, and then it releases it, so that you can then see that the wiring configuration inside. You see the 3 pins. 2 of the pins are those that carry the current to the motor and return, and the other pin is the earth pin, the ground pin, which is connected to the case of the motor. This is another good place to check the motor connections. If you check find the 2 terminals here that give you a very low resistance reading, they'll be the motor, and you should be able to decide from that you've got a good connection to the motor. You could then trace back from the socket by finding the cables that go through from that, the blue one to this choke side of the controller, and to the other point on the connector on the output from the controller. You should be able to find both of those cables on this socket. I hope that's of some use to you. To replace the plug, you'll see that there's some nicks and shapes around the body, so that it can only be inserted in one position. So you get it to that position and then tighten the screw. Tighten it fully to make sure that the cable is secure. And that should ensure you get a decent test. So on the drawing, on the schematic drawing, we could identify those cables that I've just been talking to you about. This is the spindle motor, and these are the flexible cable coming from the socket on the back panel. 1, 2, 3 wires. There, that's the plug. The wires that go into the socket at the back are 2 blue wires on my lathes. All those that I've seen have got the blue wires in. So one comes from terminal 10 on the spindle motor controller, and it goes out and connects onto the back of the motor socket. The other one goes up to the ammeter, and from the ammeter goes onto the choke, which is the black item here, M3, and from the other side of the choke it goes down to the socket on the back of the lathe where you've plugged the motor cable into. So you can see from that you can test from several points. You can remove this plug, X21, and test from between 10 and 8. Should give you the full circuit to the motor brushes. Or you can do it in stages. You can test between 10 and the socket outlet for one connection, and from 8 to the ammeter to make sure that that's there, and then leave the probe on 8 and go back down to the choke and try the probe on there. You should have the similar resistance, and then move the probe to the other side of the choke and check the link to the socket. Then of course you need to check the link across the choke itself, because that could possibly be an open circuit. It's very doubtful, very unlikely, but it could be open circuit. So you perhaps need to check from that to the outside socket, motor socket. You carry out all of these tests with the power cord out of the main supply. These are all dead circuit tests with your meter set to a low ohm scale. And you then can check the resistance across the motor brushes on those two cables, and there you'll have quite a low ohms reading. I think it might be stated as 3 ohms in the manual, but you can check that to see what the expected resistance is across the motor terminals with the 115 volt motor, or 115 volt supply with a 90 volt motor. And you can get that off terminals 1 and 2, or 3 and 2 on the socket. I hope that's some help to you. I'm sure you'll get success in the end, even if you have to wait for your friend to come back. And when this COVID-19 has gone away, we hopefully can all start living our lives again. That's all for now. Stay safe. Bye.